Sarah Thompson, a 27-year-old successful marketing executive from Chicago, has been secretly married to her college sweetheart Michael for 6 months. At a family dinner, her controlling mother, Patricia, makes cruel jokes about Sarah being too old and unmarried in front of extended family. Fed up with years of manipulation and public humiliation, Sarah decides it's time to reveal the truth about her secret wedding. But what unfolds next will expose dark family secrets that change everything forever. The sound of my mother's laughter cut through the dining room like a knife, sharp and deliberate. I froze with my fork halfway to my mouth, watching as Patricia Thompson, my own mother, wiped tears from her eyes while the entire extended family stared at me. "Oh, Sarah," she gasped between giggles, 27 and still single. At this rate, you'll be collecting cats instead of wedding rings. My name is Sarah Thompson, and I've spent my entire life trying to earn my mother's approval. Growing up in the affluent Lincoln Park neighborhood of Chicago, I thought success would finally make her proud. I have a corner office at Morrison & Associates, drive a BMW, and own a beautiful condo overlooking Lake Michigan. But none of that seemed to matter as I sat at our family's mahogany dining table, watching 30 relatives laugh at my expense. My cousin Jennifer, who was seated across from me with her husband of 3 years, joined in the cruel chorus. "Maybe Sarah's just too picky," she said with a smirk. "Some standards are just unrealistic." The November wind rattled the windows of my childhood home in Lincoln Park, and I could smell the familiar scent of my mother's expensive vanilla candles mixing with the aroma of roast beef. Everything about this house screamed perfection, from the crystal chandelier hanging above us to the imported Italian marble floors beneath our feet. But behind all that beauty lay years of emotional manipulation that I was finally ready to confront. "Patricia, leave the girl alone," my father mumbled from the head of the table, but his voice lacked any real conviction. David Thompson had always been more concerned with keeping the peace than protecting his daughter. "Oh, David, I'm just concerned," my mother replied, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Sarah's biological clock is ticking so loudly I can hear it from here. Soon she'll need fertility treatments just to have a chance." The room erupted in uncomfortable laughter again. My Aunt Susan nodded sagely. "These career women always think they have all the time in the world. Then they wake up at 40, alone and desperate." I felt heat rising in my cheeks, my hands trembling slightly as I gripped my wine glass. The burgundy liquid inside seemed to mirror the anger boiling in my chest. For years, I'd endured these family gatherings, these public humiliations disguised as loving concern. Tonight felt different, though. Tonight, I had something that would change everything. "You know," my mother continued, clearly enjoying her audience, "Mrs. Henderson from down the street was just telling me about her daughter Emma, 24, married to a doctor, already pregnant with twins. Now that's what I call life success." My cousin Michael, not my husband Michael, but my obnoxious cousin, raised his beer bottle in a mock toast. "Here's to Sarah, may she find someone desperate enough to settle." That was it. The final straw. I stood up so abruptly that my chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. The entire room fell silent, all eyes fixed on me as I reached into my purse with trembling fingers. The small velvet box felt warm in my palm, containing the truth that would shatter their cruel assumptions. "Actually," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me, "there's something you should all know." My mother's perfectly penciled eyebrows raised skeptically. "Oh, what now, Sarah? Did you adopt another rescue cat?" The condescension in her tone was the final push I needed. I opened the small box, revealing my wedding ring set, a stunning 2-carat diamond engagement ring paired with a delicate platinum band that Michael had chosen with such care 6 months ago. "I'm married," I announced, slipping the rings onto my finger where they belonged. "Have been for 6 months." The silence that followed was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that dining room as 30 faces stared at me in shock. My mother's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against her china plate with a sharp crash that seemed to echo forever. That's impossible," she whispered, her face draining of color. "You would have told us. You would have invited us to the wedding." I looked directly into her eyes, seeing my own reflection in her wide, disbelieving stare. "Would I, Mom? After years of you criticizing every man I've ever dated? After you told my last boyfriend that I was difficult and too independent for marriage? And you? Have you ever been in a situation where family members made you feel small and insignificant? How did you handle it? Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. If you're enjoying this story of family drama and standing up for yourself, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you'll want to see how this unfolds. The truth was out, but little did I know that my revelation would expose secrets far darker than I ever imagined. The broken wine glass glittered like scattered diamonds across my mother's pristine white china as she stared at me in stunned silence. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the shock etched across her face, and for the first time in my 27 years, Patricia Thompson was speechless. 6 months? My father finally managed to croak, loosening his tie as if the room had suddenly become stifling. Sarah, how could you not tell us? I remained standing, feeling more powerful than I had in years. The late afternoon sun streaming through the dining room windows caught my wedding rings, sending rainbow prisms dancing across the mahogany table. It felt symbolic somehow, light breaking through the darkness that had clouded my family relationships for so long. I didn't tell you because I knew exactly what would happen, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. Mom would have criticized everything, my dress, my flowers, my choice of venue. She would have made my wedding day about her disappointment instead of my happiness. My cousin Jennifer's mouth hung open like a fish gasping for air. But who did you marry? We don't even know you were seriously dating anyone. A smile tugged at the corners of my lips as I pulled out my phone. His name is Michael Rodriguez. He's a pediatric surgeon at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I showed them our wedding photo, the two of us laughing on the beach in Maui, my white sundress flowing in the ocean breeze. His arms wrapped around me as we exchanged vows at sunset. The room erupted in chaos. Everyone began talking at once, voices overlapping in a cacophony of questions and accusations. But my mother remained silent, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the table. A doctor? Aunt Susan gasped. Sarah, why would you keep this from us? This is wonderful news, is it? I challenged, turning to face the woman who had spent years making me feel inadequate. Because 3 months ago, when I mentioned I was seeing someone seriously, what did you say, Aunt Susan? She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I don't remember. You said, and I quote, Sarah has such unrealistic expectations. She'll be lucky if any decent man puts up with her career obsession. The words hung in the air like smoke, toxic and impossible to take back. My mother finally found her voice, but it came out as a hoarse whisper. You had a wedding without your family. Your own mother wasn't there to see you get married. No, I said firmly. I had a wedding without judgment, without criticism, without someone telling me I was too old, too picky, or too difficult to deserve love. I walked over to the window, looking out at the tree-lined street where I'd grown up. The November evening was settling in, street lights beginning to flicker on as neighbors walked their dogs past our house. This neighborhood had always looked so perfect from the outside, million-dollar homes with manicured lawns and luxury cars in every driveway. But perfection, I'd learned, was often just a mask for dysfunction. Michael and I dated for 2 years, I continued, turning back to face my family. 2 years during which I barely mentioned him because every time I brought up a man's name, someone in this family found a reason why he wasn't good enough. My father cleared his throat nervously. Now, Sarah, that's not fair. We just want what's best for you. Do you, Dad? Do you really? I pulled out my phone again, scrolling to a text thread. Because when I mentioned Michael was Hispanic, Mom's first response was to ask if his family was the right kind of people. My mother's face flushed red. I never said that. October 15th, 2:47 p.m., I read from my phone. Well, honey, you know how important compatibility is. Are his people? Do they share our values? Your exact words, Mom. The silence that followed was suffocating. I could hear the grandfather clock in the hallway ticking away the seconds, each tick marking another moment of reckoning that years of family dysfunction had led to. We love you, Sarah, my mother said finally, tears beginning to well in her eyes. We worry. You don't worry, Mom. You control. There's a difference. I sat back down, but this time I felt like I was occupying space differently, not shrinking to make others comfortable, but claiming my rightful place at the table. Cousin Jennifer, perhaps sensing the shift in power dynamics, tried to backtrack. Well, we're happy for you now. When do we get to meet him? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's the thing, Jennifer. You're not going to meet him. At least not yet. What do you mean? My father asked, confusion clouding his features. I mean that Michael and I are moving to San Francisco next month. He's been offered a position at UCSF Medical Center, and I've accepted a promotion with my company's West Coast division. The color drained from my mother's face completely. You're leaving Chicago? We are, and we're not giving out our new address to family members who can't treat us with respect. What would you do in my situation? Would you cut ties with toxic family members even if it meant missing out on future relationships? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel because what my mother revealed next changed everything I thought I knew about my family. But just as I thought I had control of the situation, my mother stood up slowly, a strange smile creeping across her face that sent chills down my spine. My mother's smile was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Cold, calculating, and utterly terrifying. She stood at the head of the table like a queen surveying her court, and suddenly the entire atmosphere in the room shifted from shocked confusion to something much darker. "Oh, Sarah," she said, her voice taking on a tone I'd never heard before. "My naive, precious daughter. You think you've won something here, don't you?" I felt a chill run down my spine as she walked slowly around the table toward me. The clicking of her high heels on the marble floor sounded like a countdown to something ominous. "Mom, what are you talking about?" I managed to ask, though my voice came out smaller than I intended. She stopped directly in front of me, her perfectly manicured hand reaching into her purse. What she pulled out made my blood turn to ice. A manila envelope thick with documents, my name written across the front in her pristine handwriting. "You want to know why I've been so concerned about your marital status, sweetheart?" Her smile widened, revealing teeth that now seemed predatory. "It's because of this." She dumped the contents of the envelope onto the table. Legal documents scattered across the white tablecloth, and I could see letterheads from law firms, bank statements, and what looked like a will. My grandfather's will. "Grandfather Thompson left you something in his will," my father said quietly, his face pale. "Something we never told you about." My hand shook as I reached for the documents. The grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to tick louder now, marking each second as my world began to crumble. "What are you talking about?" "Grandpa died when I was 15. That was 12 years ago. He left you $5 million, my mother said matter-of-factly, as if she were discussing the weather. But there was a condition. I stared at the legal document in front of me, the words swimming before my eyes as I tried to process what I was reading. "A condition? You had to be married before your 28th birthday," my father explained, unable to meet my eyes. "If you weren't married by then, the money would go to the family foundation that your mother controls." The room spun around me as the full magnitude of their deception hit me like a physical blow. "My 28th birthday. That's in 3 weeks." "Exactly," my mother purred, settling back into her chair with the satisfaction of a cat who'd cornered its prey. "We've spent years making sure you stayed single, criticizing every relationship, driving away every potential husband. And it almost worked." I felt sick to my stomach as memories came flooding back. Every boyfriend who'd suddenly stopped calling after meeting my family. Every time my mother had found fault with men I'd cared about. Every cruel comment designed to lower my self-esteem. "You sabotaged my relationships," I whispered, the full horror of it washing over me. "For 12 years, you deliberately tried to keep me single so you could steal my inheritance." My cousin Jennifer shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Wait, you all knew about this?" "Of course we knew," Aunt Susan snapped. $5 million doesn't just disappear without family knowing about it. I looked around the table at the faces of people I'd called family my entire life. Every single one of them had been complicit in this betrayal. The elaborate Thanksgiving dinners, the family vacations, the birthday celebrations. It had all been a lie designed to manipulate me out of my grandfather's gift. "Thomas Morrison?" I said suddenly, the name coming back to me. "The guy I dated for 8 months 3 years ago. He broke up with me right after meeting you at Christmas dinner." My mother's smile faltered slightly. "I may have mentioned that you were unstable, that you had unrealistic expectations about marriage. And David Chen, the architect I was engaged to 4 years ago? I told him about your student loans," my father admitted quietly. "Made them sound much worse than they were. Suggested you might be a financial burden." Each revelation felt like another knife to my heart. Years of wondering what was wrong with me, why I couldn't maintain relationships, why every man I cared about eventually walked away. And all along it had been my own family orchestrating my loneliness. "But here's the beautiful irony," I said, standing up again and pulling out my marriage certificate. I am married. I qualify for the inheritance. My mother's smile returned, more vicious than before. Oh, sweetheart. Did you think I wouldn't investigate this Michael Rodriguez of yours? She pulled out another document, and my blood turned cold as I recognized it immediately. An annulment certificate. It seems your husband has been having second thoughts, she said with false sympathy. Amazing what a private investigator can dig up about someone's past. Did you know Michael had a gambling problem in college? Racked up quite a bit of debt? My hands trembled as I stared at the document. This isn't real. Michael wouldn't... $20,000, my mother continued relentlessly. That's what it cost to pay off his remaining student loans and give him enough to start fresh. Amazing how quickly love fades when someone offers you a way out of debt. The room started spinning as I realized the depth of their manipulation. Even my marriage, my happiness, my future, they had found a way to destroy it all. The annulment was filed yesterday, my father said, his voice barely above a whisper. You're legally single again, Sarah. You always have been, in the eyes of the law. I sank back into my chair, feeling like every breath was a struggle. But then, slowly, a different kind of smile began to spread across my face. You know what, Mom? I said, my voice gaining strength. You're absolutely right. You did win. Her eyebrows raised in surprise at my calm response. You taught me the most valuable lesson of my life, I continued. You showed me exactly what kind of person I never want to become. I stood up one final time, looking around the table at the faces of people who had betrayed me in the cruelest way possible. Keep the money. Keep your manipulation. Keep your toxic dysfunction. I grabbed my purse and headed toward the door. Because I'd rather have nothing and know I'm a good person than have millions and know I'm like you. Have you ever discovered that people you trusted were working against you all along? How did you find the strength to walk away? Share your story in the comments below. If this story moved you, please subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories of overcoming family betrayal and finding your own strength. As I walked out of that house forever, I had no idea that within 6 months I would discover something about my grandfather's will that would turn everything around once again. The sound of the door closing behind me felt like the end of one life and the beginning of another. And sometimes that's exactly what we need.